panelists for that enlightening session. Moving on to our second session, Deconstructing Geopolitical Dynamics of Central Asia and the South Caucasus and Exploring India's Outreach. I would request our session chair, Ms. Nvard Chalikyan, to formally introduce our panelists. Ms. Chalikyan is a fellow at APRI in Armenia. Please. And our panelists are Dr. Nalim Mahapatra, Ambassador Pankaj Saran, and Mr. Leonid Nersisyan once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Nvard Chalikyan. I'm a research fellow at Applied Policy Research Institute based in Yerevan, Armenia. First of all, I want to thank the USANAS Foundation for this invitation. I must say that this is the second time I'm in India within 1 month, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. I will be moderating this session, which is titled Geopolitical Dynamics in Central Asia and South Caucasus. We will dwell on the importance of these regions in the context of India's foreign policy, as well as discuss India's outreach to these regions. I will now introduce the panelists, and before we get to the Q&A session, I will say a couple of words about geopolitical implications of India-Armenia relations. Ambassador Pankaj Saran is a former diplomat with 40 years of experience in foreign, strategic, and national security affairs. He has served in key positions within the government of India, including the Prime Minister's office, the National Security Council Secretariat, Ministry of External Affairs, and in several Indian missions abroad. From 2018 to 2021, he has served as the Deputy National Security Advisor for Strategic Affairs under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, dealing with regional and global strategy formulations. He is presently the convener at NatStrat, a Delhi-based independent center for research on strategic and signal maritime foundation. Professor Nalim Mahapatra is an assistant professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University for the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. Earlier, he worked as a project fellow in Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies in Kolkata. His areas of interest are democratization, post-colonist transition, energy security, geopolitics, and regional security. And my colleague Leonid Nersisyan, whom you met at the previous panel, is a defense analyst at Applied Policy Research Institute. I think he was introduced previously. Ambassador Saran, I would like to start the discussion by giving the floor to you.
Thank you very, very much. We're actually discussing two different regions, I would say, Central Asia and the Caucasus. And I think it's important it's important to actually distinguish between the two, particularly if we are going to talk about Indian foreign policy to both these regions. So if I begin with Central Asia, the dynamic is very different. We have centuries-old ties with Central Asia. We have civilizational, cultural links. And Central Asia was much closer in many ways to the Indian consciousness than the Caucasus were, strangely enough. The problem India had with Central Asia was of connectivity. In fact, actually, before the British came to India, India's territorial frontiers were contiguous to the Russian heartland and Mongolia. Tibet was an independent entity. Pakistan did not exist. There was therefore no Radcliffe Line or Durand Line. India went right up to Iran and Russia. And I think what is happening in the last few years is that this idea of the larger India is beginning to take shape, and I myself have been driving it, because otherwise what we have seen is that we have got boxed into an artificially created sub-region that has been taught to us by the British. And it was a legacy we inherited from the British, although they enjoyed the benefits of the British Indian Empire. First point. Second point is, for many years after, well, from 1917 to 1991, our window to Central Asia was through Moscow. And therefore, that kind of reduced the level and intensity of our contacts with the Central Asian countries. After 1991, again, in deference to Moscow and its somewhat proprietorial strategic interests in Central Asia, we actually kind of hesitated in going fast forward in our relationship with Central Asia. But change happened in the last few years, where we have sought to plow an independent furrow into those 5 or 6 Central Asian capitals, and with varying results. But since time is limited, what we came against was one basic obstacle, which is lack of connectivity. Central Asia is landlocked because of India's difficulties with Pakistan and the turmoil in Afghanistan. We found we were not able to connect to Central Asia. So that affected the trade, other exchanges, and this problem by and large remains. Some solutions have been found, but essentially lack of connectivity, physical connectivity. We are trying to get over this problem through air connectivity and other forms. And there are proposals which will be discussed in the future sessions. So that's on Central Asia. The second thing about Central Asia is its Islamic character. And what Central Asia is viewing from their perspective are two different models of social characteristics. One is India, the other is Pakistan. So Pakistan, in a sense, and both models, India and Pakistan, create difficulties for Central Asia because they don't know really how to relate to these two entities. But broadly speaking, if one can generalize, the Central Asians regard India as the mother country, if I can use that term, and Pakistan as the artificial construct. And in the last 20 years, because of Afghanistan and everything else, you would have imagined Islamic solidarity would trump everything else. But it's exactly the opposite. So today, if there is any welcome given inside Central Asia, it's to India, not to Pakistan. So there is fear about the model of Islam which Pakistan is promoting within its country and, of course, in Afghanistan. So I'll just stop on that with Central Asia. On the Caucasus, forgive me for drawing a parallel, but I'll just begin by saying Indian academic knowledge and expertise on the Caucasus is next to nothing. The Indian mindset, of course, is obsessed with the Anglo-Saxon world, which is, do I need to stop? Okay. So, of course, that's a fundamental kind of foundational problem, but even if you go beyond the Anglo-Saxon world, Indian understanding of internal European dynamics, and the previous session was actually for me very interesting. We need to hear much more of it sitting in Asia and in New Delhi. I mean, just as you would hear learned discussions on India and Pakistan sitting in London and Paris and Berlin, or on Kashmir. So, the Caucasus in this whole European continent is probably the least studied in India. Maybe because it's the most complex. So first point. Second point is, forgive me for drawing the parallel, but in a very crude way, the Caucasus are to Russia and to Europe what the Northeast is to India. And by that I mean, it's highly complex. There are wheels within wheels, there are fault lines, there are overlapping ethnicities, there are foreign powers at play, there are cross-border linkages. It's a full cocktail of everything which would create instability and destabilization. And it is geographically remote from the national capital. But if you look at the map, and I had the map just to reflect a little more, it's actually good we're having this panel and we have experts from Armenia. You have the Caucasus, you have Ukraine, you have Central Asia. It's all happening out there. And this attack yesterday, most unfortunate. So what we are seeing is actually, we thought, and I visited Chechnya, I visited Grozny, I was probably the first Indian ambassador to visit Chechnya a few years ago, 5 years ago. So what we are seeing is the classical understanding that the Caucasus are unstable is part of a bigger instability which actually began in 1991. And someone used the word tremors in the previous panel. In my opinion, the aftershocks of the collapse of the Soviet Union are still going on 30 years down the line. And all that we are discussing are just variants of these aftershocks. So you could have them in different parts of Russia. You could have them in different peripheries of Russia. I mean, instead of the Caucasus, we could be discussing the Baltics, or we could be discussing maybe Central Asia, which actually we are. So the instability in the Caucasus, in my view, is serious from many points of view, but it has to be seen also from this larger regional instability, and it makes it clear for an Indian, and India should be, Indian observers actually, should be able to relate and understand the importance of Syria, Turkey, and why Russia went into Syria in 2015. What is the role of Turkey in that region? And we also need to actually understand the whole Chechnya wars which took place, there's 2 wars and everything else. Last point, I'll just finish there. In terms of India's relationships with the Caucasus, I think the India-Armenia relationship is one of the most important, understated, and I'm glad in the last few years it has really got the radar and the attention of the policy makers. India's relations with Greece, extremely important. So we have to do much, much more with both these countries, particularly with Armenia and also, of course, Greece. We also have to be able to understand the social and the breakup of those societies, to understand how they have tackled the whole problem of terrorism, radicalization, and so on and so forth. I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your insightful remarks. I would like to give the floor now to Professor Nalim Mahapatra to say.
Thank you, Madam. Esteemed gentlemen, it is a privilege to speak on India, Central Asia, and I will say India post-Soviet Eurasian space, because Caucasus, Central Asia are part of post-Soviet space. When we want to know about Central Asia, Caucasus from Indian perspective, our holy religious textbooks like Rig Veda, Matsya Purana talks about lot about India's relations with Central Asia and Arctic. In fact, I will quote my teacher, Professor Devendra Kaushik, who used to treat in his writings India to Arctic as a single geocultural space. and he used to say India's territory extended up to Arctic. And that evidence can be found in the book written by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, The Arctic Home in the Vedas. Even in Rig Veda, we will find a lot of mentions about India's cultural connections with Central Asia, Arctic, and also Caucasus. For example, the holy place, the fire temple of Azerbaijan reminds us about our closer cultural closeness to Azerbaijan, Armenia, and other Central Asian countries. For example, the name Bukhara denotes Bihar, the Buddhist monastery, and this Samarkand says Markandeya. The name came from the holy Rishi Markandeya. That testifies India's cultural closeness to Central Asia. In fact, it is a single geocultural space because now new theories are coming out which rejects this, the whole notion of the Aryan invasion theory. So we can say India's territory extended out to Arctic. So this is the historical premise from where I will start my lecture, because as a British political scientist, James Price once stated, geography is the basis of history. So we will rebuild our geopolitical relations with Central Asia and Caucasus, including Russia, through this prism of geoculture, because that is the edifice through which we build the geopolitical relations. The point is that how we look at Central Asian space, and we look at Central Asian space that it is a very culturally closer to us, and we have a significant strategic interest in Central Asia. Why? There are three reasons. Number one, there is a certain kind of a geopolitical pluralism is churning in Central Asia. This is because the Central Asians are not keen on China's entry into Central Asian geopolitical space. They think China is just expanding and using Central Asian space to achieve its imperial goal, because China, as we know, is an imperial power. Secondly, Russia is not in a position to control China's expanding influence in Central Asia, including Russia's Siberia and Far East, because the Russian policymakers, they are forgetting the famous line written by their own geopolitical thinker Alexander Dugin in 1995. In the book, The Foundation of Geopolitics, Dugin stated, Russia's number one enemy is China, long-term enemy, but I think Russian policymakers should think twice while engaging with China. The third point is that this is why I'm discussing all this point, because this is the structural factors in geopolitics. We always talk about the structural factors which shapes the geopolitical narratives. And in this context, I will highlight three important developments which are occurring in this post-Soviet Eurasian space. And this is what McIntyre called pivot states in 1904. Then he extended that space to, this is what he calls a geopolitical heartland. So the point is that, and in heartland he had included Mediterranean Sea, Black Sea, and including Baltic Sea. So when we think of post-Soviet Eurasia, Central Asia, Caucasus, we should think of including Black Sea. And that is where our interest lies in, because India is the global power now. So since we are the global power, we have to control effectively Black Sea and Mediterranean Sea, because that is where our sphere of influence lies. And for that purpose, we have two projects. One is the IMEC corridor project, which has been announced recently, and that gives India a space to influence the Mediterranean geopolitics, thus shaping the heartland geopolitics. And that will, in fact, will help India to boost its presence in Central Asian geopolitical space. Unlike China, which donates money, buy land, and exploit the Central Asian resources, and pursues the policy of and pursues the policies of yellow perils, that is the adjective which the Central Asian Russian scholars use. India pursues a benevolent policy towards Central Asia, a more humanistic policy, that is building the capacity of the Central Asian population. That we are doing through providing medicines, and at the same time health facilities, not only health facilities but also technological assistance. And if you ask any Central Asian students, and I have asked many students from Central Asian who are studying in JU, they say we love India because India is providing all sorts of technological assistance. That is one of the linchpin, because technology is the major harbinger of present day geopolitics. So India is enhancing the capacity of the Central Asian population. Unfortunately, some Indian scholars, they also say, no, we cannot match China. But look at, as I have stated, China is plundering Central Asia. But we are providing a gateway to Central Asian population, including Caucasus, our Armenian friends, technological assistance. And that is bringing them into the mainstream of global geopolitics. Health, we are providing economic assistance. And in this context, I will outline two major corridors apart from INSTC and the Chahabar connectivity project. We can also strengthen our relations with Armenia, and from Iran, Armenia, Georgia, we can access Black Sea. That is one route which I always write. The second route which I always focus is on harnessing the potentiality of Kazakhstan. And from Kazakhstan, we can take oil through tankers through two rivers, which is flowing to the Siberian forest, the Ob and Irtis rivers, and we can take oil from Kazakhstan, and we can use the Indo-Pacific corridor to bring oil to India. Kazakhstan oil, because Kazakhstan is also keen to explore Indo-Pacific corridor. So this is our advantage. We can use, being an Indo-Pacific player, we can use that strategic advantage in bringing Central Asian countries into the Indo-Pacific forum in some other way, and that is why you need a greater Indo-Pacific policy. Greater Indo-Pacific policy will give India a strategic leeway in exploring the geopolitical developments that are occurring in the post-Soviet Eurasian space. So, India is a normative player in Central Asia, a geocultural player, a geoeconomic power, though because geopolitics, we believe, as Henry Kissinger once stated, geopolitics means it is a policy of equilibrium. Yes, we also believe where all countries should have a role in Central Asia's development. Means, but all countries, I mean to say, India, Russia, and also if some of the countries like Japan, South Korea, even United States is also taking a keen interest in the development of the region, because now it is not that the new great game is not between Britain and Russia. The new great game is between this is what I call great game 3.0 between China and Russia, and the Central Asians require India, and Russia also requires India to play a major role in the Central Asian geopolitical space. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for really important points that you have highlighted. I would like, just as an announcement, to say that APRI Armenia has announced a contest for essay competition among the students in the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Because you are from the university, I would like just to pass the word around. So I would like to give the floor now to Leonid Nersisyan for discussing the security aspects in the South Caucasus.
Thank you, Nvard. Yeah, I think it's important. So what we try to do now with your university. So you will have some expertise on the South Caucasus at the end. So and in general, we see that more Indians are coming to Armenia nowadays. So there will be more people who understands the country, I hope. And talking about the security situation in South Caucasus, Central Asia. Beginning with South Caucasus, we have a situation when in South Caucasus, particularly in the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, there was a big vacuum of power being developed after first 2020 second Nagorno-Karabakh war, where military disbalance became even higher, and second was this was even more supported by Russo-Ukrainian war and consequences of that, which were a war on Nagorno-Karabakh with cleansing of Armenian population there and some attacks on Armenian proper territory. That vacuum is being now filled by other countries, other players. This situation in general showed that over-dependence on one country for Armenia, and I think for any country, is a big mistake. And I see that India is not doing that at all, so you try to have relations with multiple partners, and now Armenia's foreign policy and defense sector is being in the process of diversification, and one of the biggest partners in this diversification is India, especially in the defense industrial field, but we hope that it will be also more in economy and other sectors. Except India, we have European monitoring mission on the borders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, which is a very new trend. We, moreover, have doubled the number of this monitoring mission recently. So, at the same time, we develop our defense cooperations with France extensively in both military technical ways, air defense assets, and also in terms of military reform, consultancies, instructors. So, and Armenia is very open to other partners and works on building, developing other ties. At the same time, Armenia is still part of CSTO, and despite frozen relations, it still got some, for example, Russia's arms supplies, some contracts signed. So we see that there will be the balance of power in the region changed very much, and is still being in process of changes. Talking about other countries of the region, we have Georgia, which is not that active this year, so it's not joining, despite its Western, let's say, way it have chosen, it's not joining anti-Russian sanctions, so it tries to stay neutral. At the same time, they got NATO candidate, EU candidate status recently, but having the situation now, probably they are not going to be a member state next few years. Talking about Azerbaijan, they had I think, bigger shift towards Turkey in 2020, especially in military field. We have Turkish Land Forces General Bahtiyar Ersay as an official advisor to head of General Staff in Azerbaijan, and he was there present during 2020 war. We have extending ties of Azerbaijan with Pakistan, and probably this time it's already seriously about procurement of the Pakistani jet fighters and all the training packages for them. So that's going to be a pretty big story in terms of building the relations with Pakistan. So that is the situation. China there is present via Pakistan because this jet fighter package, this is GF-17 jet fighters, which are Chinese licensed produced. But they still try to be a more neutral, at least openly. And if we move to Central Asia, we will see a big different picture there. There we have some kind of not open, but maybe some rivalry between Russia and China, but it's began before war in Ukraine. For example, Turkmenistan, if we look at the security, they procure only Chinese weapons nowadays, and starting from, I think, for last 8 years already. So they don't buy S-300 or S-400, they buy HQ-9, the Chinese copy of the same gear. Same is doing Uzbekistan in a more balanced manner, but they also are not relying only in Russia in security field nowadays. But if we go to, for example, to Tajikistan, which have border with Afghanistan, there we will have more, I think, reliance on Russia. And after what happened in Afghanistan, I think this reliance is even more now. They are very afraid of Taliban generals. With Kazakhstan is, I think, got the most mature foreign policy there. They have many partners and they try to have good, diversified foreign policy. So good relations with Russia, good relations with China, good relations with some European countries, including France, good relations with Turkey. So they have this diversified approach. In general, we see that in different regions trends are different, and also we see how complex these regions are. Even if we take the small southern Caucasus states, they are very complex to understand in terms of decision making, internal policy challenges. It can sound. Of course, India is a very big country, but even to understand the 3 million Armenia or 3 million Georgia, you need lots of expertise, I think, and these connections are important. Sometimes small countries are even more complex to understand, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you, Leonid. Before we pass to the question and answer session, I would like to say some remarks about the geopolitics of South Caucasus and how India's interests are invested in here. And so in the panels yesterday, we heard about the importance of the civilizational factor in India's foreign policy as a global player. In this divided world, India positions itself as a voice of reason and wisdom, anchored in its values as a civilization. I believe that for realizing this mission, India needs to forge stronger ties with countries that also represent ancient civilizations, and Armenia is one of those countries. India and Armenia have deep-rooted friendly relations dating back to centuries before Christ. As one of my Indian friends put it, there is also a civilizational comfort between the interactions of the two people, and I myself actually feel it. Armenia is a natural partner for India. It is a democracy, and among other things, it is also sharing India's vision of peaceful means of conflict resolution. Armenia and India have traditionally supported each other in international platforms, and Armenia supports India's position in the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Armenia is also important from the geopolitical and geoeconomic perspective. And here I would like to draw your attention on two major infrastructure projects that are being conceived in our region, and I will argue that they are in a way conflicting with each other. So first one you have heard already today about, it's the North-South Transport Corridor. As we know, the conflict in Ukraine, sanctions on Russia, and growing tensions in the Red Sea and the blockage of Suez Canal have intensified the need for alternative routes to Europe. South Caucasus is very important in this regard, as its strategic location can be an enabler of transport corridors from Asia to Europe that would be alternative to the traditional routes. So whoever controls and uses these routes will have an upper hand and will have greater chances of projecting its power in the future world order. So North-South Transport Corridor, or INSTC, or the Persian Gulf Black Sea project as advanced by Armenia, runs from north to south in our region and connects India with Europe through Iran, Armenia or Azerbaijan, Georgia and the Black Sea. I will note a number of benefits of INSTC, actually the section running through Armenia when it becomes operational. It will reduce the shipping time of a container from Mumbai to Bulgaria by around 20 days compared to the current traditional routes, according to rough estimates, of course. This will make a big difference in commercial terms, considering that the EU is India's second largest trading partner. Iran and its Chabahar port is a strategic point in this project, as has already been mentioned. So Chabahar is a deep sea port which can accommodate ocean ships. It is exempt from sanctions, and India has signed an agreement with Iran for a period of 10 years to operate 2 terminals in the Chabahar port and make a significant investments there. Armenia has also joined the Chabahar port project and intends to make major investments in this. Armenia also serves as a vital trade route in this corridor project because, on the one hand, it has a comprehensive and enhanced partnership agreement with the European Union, and on the other hand, Armenia is a member of the Eurasian Economic Union. This can help India get an access to the Eurasian market as well. Considering that India wants to start negotiations on a free trade agreement with Eurasian Union, this is going to acquire greater importance with time. So both India and Armenia have strong interests in this project. However, there is another project running through the region, the project IDEA, which is advanced aggressively by Turkey and Azerbaijan, and which they call the so-called Zangezur Corridor. The beneficiaries of this project primarily are Turkey, Azerbaijan, as well as to some extent China and Pakistan in the long run. The goal of this project is to establish land connectivity between Turkey and Azerbaijan all the way to Central Asia and beyond. By its geography, Armenia has been standing on the way of this project for centuries. But for Armenia, Armenia has rejected the idea of an extraterritorial corridor that Azerbaijan demands, and instead has agreed to give a road to Azerbaijan. However, Azerbaijan is using all the means to push aggressively for this corridor, which will mean an extraterritorial control. Taking control of Nagorno-Karabakh by force, by ethnic cleansing of Armenians, attempts to erase the traces of Armenian culture and occupation, and also the use of force and the threat of use of force that we're currently witnessing from Azerbaijan are parts of this strategy. I want to emphasize that this is a major, I can say, war against the Armenian civilization, and this is something that India also should take a note of. It is also important to mention that Turkey and Azerbaijan have a strong connection with Pakistan, an alliance of 3 brothers, as it has already been mentioned. And this includes political, military, economic and cultural collaboration. Azerbaijan and Turkey support Pakistan's stance on Kashmir. And Pakistan, alongside with Turkey, was supporting Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh war. And the tactics used by them in Nagorno-Karabakh have many similarities with those employed in Kashmir by Pakistan. I don't want to go into too many details. My point was to illustrate that this Zangezur Corridor project is running against the interests of Armenia, but also India, because if it happens, it is going to block the Armenia and Iran border, which means we're going to have major issues with communicating with each other and a lot of other security issues. So this is the note that I wanted to draw your attention to. And I think this is important because this is what is happening with my country as we speak. So please follow the developments. And I believe that India and Armenia should be working together much closely, and the current level of collaboration that is there is very important. It needs to be developed, and security aspect of it is important, but also other aspects of the relationship which extend to business ties and to different fields of collaboration. And probably the direct flight between our two countries would be the #1 thing on our agenda to start with. So I thank you all for your attention, and I would like to open the floor to question and answer session, please, if you have questions. We have three questions. Yes. Okay, he was first. You were the first.
Thank you very much for a very interesting discussion that you chaired. I wanted to ask you, when you say that there's a lot of pressure on Armenia to allow an extraterritorial corridor of their so-called connectivity project, how can they put pressure on Armenia to grant an extraterritorial corridor? They have no business. If you refuse to give it to them, so when you say a lot of pressure, what can they do to force you to give an extraterritorial corridor to Armenian country? How can they do it?
Thank you for this question. This is very important for us. Unfortunately, the dynamics that we have observed is that there is lack of balance of power in the region because they have an upper hand, just objectively. And the way they have managed to push forward these and other ideas is by the threat of use of force. This is
Well, I can assure you, we should sign a security mutual assistance contract with India, and then we should get into the game. Because I certainly feel India is now reached a level of military and defense capability when they should, in an area of core interest, get into the game and confront these people, because basically you can call what they call that fraternal brotherhood based on religion. But Pakistan is the one which has denied India connectivity through their territory for the last 70 years plus. And would it really have been necessary? One could have forced their way before they got into all these kind of nuclear armed relationships. Thanks to America turning in a blind eye, defying the Kessler Amendment in the US Senate, because Pakistan was giving them a kind of base to be able to carry out operations in Afghanistan. We have seen all this happen. And I personally feel you should propose, India should sign a mutual defense contract between India and Armenia.
I agree with you.
And get into the game where it deserves to be done, because somewhere you have to actually let the knuckles strike each other. And I can assure you, should it come to it, all these so-called allies will have to take a backseat. I can assure you.
Thank you for this suggestion. I think we
It's a very abnormal
we
suggestion,
agree
but I
with
don't
what you're
make it
saying.
for the government of India. I make it as a person,
Yeah, I know.
courtesy, but as an intelligent citizen of this country.
Thank you, thank you. I would like my colleague Leonid also to comment on your question.
I mean, there's not that much to comment. What is military pressure is when your border is being attacked, people are killed, territories are occupied. Like in 2020, September, 200 square kilometers near Jermuk city were occupied, and more than 200 of our soldiers being killed. So that was what happened. And now we have that threat existing all the time in the air. So it's like, we don't know if in 2 weeks that won't repeat once again. And that's position, it's not only Armenian position. I think if you will read American intelligence report for this year, they consider repeatance of what happened in September 2022 a pretty high chance, I think, let's say so.
And should it come with that, will it come with the fact of the long-term strategic alliance of Pakistan?
Yes, this is all interconnected.
Okay.
You would like to add a comment?
When we think about Armenia, we should think about two treaties which the Tsarist Russian Empire signed with Persian Empire. These treaties are 1830 Treaty of Bulestan, and the second treaty was Treaty of Turkmenistan, which was signed in 1822-24. So the point is that, and because of these two treaties, there is today what we know Azerbaijan. Prior to that two treaties, there was no Azerbaijan. So the point is, when we talk about geopolitics in a historical context, we have to understand the significance of these two treaties. And that can be used by Armenia against Azerbaijan. In fact, the problem is Nagorno-Karabakh problem is between Armenia and Iran, not with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is a third party. You know, so the point is, historically, if you look at, so I'm talking about 19th century geopolitics. So you have to engage with Iran more pragmatically, and I think the international community should voice their concerns. People are speaking a lot about Israel or Hamas war, but the point is we have to also speak for Armenia, the genocides which the Azeris are committing in Nagorno-Karabakh. Same thing Hamas is doing in Israel also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There was a question here.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I was not going to intervene, but my understanding is the moderator should be a neutral one. But what I see, you have come all the way from Erivan to Udaipur to Besh, Turkey, to create a scenario, Turkey, Pakistan and Azerbaijan against India, which is totally baseless. You talk about territorial integrity and you start everything from 2020. Who invaded the Nagorno-Karabakh? Nagorno-Karabakh, did you respect Azerbaijan's territorial integrity? Since 1991, those territories were under occupation. I think we have to put the record straight in order to enlighten the audience. It is true that we have good relations with Pakistan and with Azerbaijan, but that does not mean we have a front against India. India is a friendly country for us. We have historical relations. So I think you have come here with a special message to destroy Turkey-Indian relations. I'm sorry to say that.
Thank you. I have come to India all the way to speak the truth. And I was asked to take the role of the moderator because the moderator was not here. And that's why I combined with the speech that I prepared initially. I think I am objective, but I will
let's move on.
Leonid to speak about...
I will be very calm in answering the question. I don't say that we are saints at all. Let's start with that. We are not saints. Nobody is saint in this world. But we are talking about situation after 2020. We don't have Nagorno-Karabakh now on the table. It's bad, it's good. We can have different positions on that. There is no... We're talking about Armenia-Azerbaijan border, and 200 square kilometers of the land is occupied. And okay, you can say that Armenia was occupying Azeri land, so what it means that now Azerbaijan should occupy Armenian land. So how long it can go on? Armenia made lots of one-side concessions during the last 4 years. Many of them were very hard to do from point of view of as our prime minister, because society don't like that, as you understand, when you give up things and not get anything. Okay, that was okay. That situation. What I'm trying to say, that situation changed, and now Armenia did lots of steps. So okay, if there is no will to peace, today Azerbaijan is stronger than if the situation is never going to solve. There could come one day when.
Can we come back to the Caucasus, please?
Yes.
I've been waiting patiently. This is just to add to Ambassador Saran and also to Leonid. I think the initial remarks by Ambassador Saran was that Caucasus all throughout, but for the benefit of the audience, there is a northern Caucasus and a southern Caucasus. And North Caucasus consists of 6 republics. The Republic of Dagestan, the Republic of Chechnya, the Republic of Ingushetia, the Republic of North Ossetia, Alania, and Cherkessia. North Ossetia, Alania then becomes North Ossetia, North Alania and South Alania, where Chigin is the capital of South Ossetia. So just for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Comment. I'm just saying, based on this little exchange that I think we've seen, it's actually very good that USANAS is providing a platform for different views to be expressed. Sitting in Udaipur, I think, as Ambassador Puri was saying yesterday, why Bharat matters is that we should actually increasingly become a platform and an enabler for resolution of highly complex geopolitical conflicts and issues. And if you have Armenia present in the room, and Turkey and Israel, and maybe Iran is not here, but that's really good. I mean, we can't solve the Caucasus problem here, but at least, and this is not for the foreign audience, but just among ourselves, we should be doing this much, much more. And instead of, going to Singapore and Bangkok and this and that for all these track 2 dialogues and all, that's a waste of time. I mean, we have wasted so much time in not actually becoming the ground for resolution of just an observation.